you feel that heavy fog of fatigue settling over your soul, not from the labor itself, but from the unrelenting noise within, the wrong voice that commands your every step. Have you ever paused to wonder why, despite your endless efforts, the victory you crave drifts further away? Why does weariness claim you before you even begin to taste success? Is it not curious that the very voice you trust to lead you is often the one steering you astray? The one that whispers anxieties, doubts, and feverish impatience, drowning the sound of wisdom and calm? You labor, yes, but at what cost? Like a captain who frowns at his compass, ignoring its silent, steady direction, you struggle with a restless voice that promises much and delivers exhaustion. You must recognize this. Fatigue is no mere consequence of toil, but the signal of misguided command. The fool tries to win battles by shouting louder, while the wise learn that mastery begins by tuning the voice within. What victory can be had when the mind, that sacred judge, trembles on the throne? Comment 1 if you find your inner voice often unsettled and overbearing, or comment 0 if your struggle is different, but you understand this silent tyranny. And do not forget to subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss the counsel that might just quiet the storm within and steer you toward true triumph. Understand this reversal. The louder the clamor inside, the weaker your hold on reason. The impatient man may hurry, but never guide his path. The disciplined soul, who listens to stillness, commands a power greater than all haste. Remember, he that can have patience can have what he will. The mastery of self is the foundation of conquest, not the conquest of fleeting achievements. Your fatigue whispers that the wrong voice has been at the helm. Learn to recognize whose counsel you heed. This is no mere matter of rest, but of reclaiming your sovereignty, the quiet strength that lends clarity amid chaos. Brace yourself for a journey inward, for the battles in the world are won first in the chambers of your mind, where the true commander resides. So now, you stand at the crossroads of your own mind, tangled in the whispers and shouts of the voice that claims your allegiance. But what is this voice, really? It is no sage nor guide. Instead, it is a chattering impostor, a salesman selling urgency where none exists, a puppet master tangled in strings of doubt and delay. You clutch at these whispers as though they were the very air, yet they are but illusions, phantoms spun from fear, wrapped in the cloak of necessity. You tell yourself, "I am not ready." How often has this phrase become a fetter, binding you to the soil of procrastination? "Ready, sir," is a mirage on the horizon, forever retreating as you approach. It seduces you with a promise of perfection before action. But mark this truth: no man was ever ready. The great figures of history did not wait for readiness. They waded into chaos with trembling hands and steady hearts. This notion of readiness is a cunning trap. It tells you to wait for the sun to shine just so, for the winds to favor your sails, for the crowd to disperse before you step. But the sun, the wind, and the crowd are indifferent to your plans. They will not pause for your convenience. The exact insistence on waiting is the siren song that anchors you to a shore of inaction. Consider motivation. That fickle, flame-bright muse you chase with desperation. You believe you must be motivated before you move, yet motivation is often the shadow-trailing action's footprints, not its cause. You wait for motivation, but it waits for your motion. The thinker who waits for the muse will find himself eternally sitting, while those who act find the goddess dancing in their steps. And time, oh, the tyranny of the right time. Is there ever a right hour when the clock's hands align perfectly with your aspirations? The calendar cares nothing for your hopes and fears. This deceiver keeps you in a constant state of preparation, always pointing to a future where the stars align and your circumstances bow before your desires. But what if the right time is now? What if the only moment gifted to you is this breath, this pulse? To wait for a better time is to barter your life for an illusion, and illusions are costly debts paid in regret. Now, dare to peer into that repetitive echo chamber in your head where these thoughts resonate, amplified until they seem carved in stone, immutable truths. You recite, "I must wait. I need more. "I can't yet," until your mind births a prison from mere words. These are not truths. They are the bricks of your confinement, built with your own hands while you look elsewhere for keys. This is the quiet madness. Believing that hesitation is prudence, that delay is strategy, that silence is preparation. Yet in reality, hesitation is surrender, delay a betrayal, and silence a retreat. Look around history's mirror and see how those who waited often found the world moved past them. Not because they lacked ability or vision, but because their inner voice was a wary sentinel rather than a bold commander. They were armies without generals, ships drifting without rudders, fires smoldering but never blazing. When you say, "I need to feel motivated," what you truly mean is, "I need to feel safe," caught in the illusion that action can only be born from certainty. But certainty is the dream of idle minds. The world belongs to the uncertain, the bold, the restless, who dare to step with no guarantee but faith. Reflect on this paradox. The very voice that demands perfect readiness, steadfast motivation, and timeless patience is the voice that deflates your spirit and freezes your will. It is the architect of your fatigue, crafting exhaustion from fear and falsehood. This voice is a critic, not a coach, a jailer, not a liberator. And so, your fatigue is not of the body alone but the soul, weighed down by relentless counsel that offers no rest, only rules. It is a fatigue born from conflict within, a war where every victory is stolen by another wave of doubt. Picture a garden left untended, choked by weeds of "not yet," "maybe later," and "I must prepare." What grows here? Only regret and frustration, the bitter fruits of inaction. Your garden, your life, demands the hand that dares to prune and plant, to cultivate with imperfect tools under imperfect skies. Listen closely. The voice you must dethrone is the one that offers comfort in hesitation, but condemns you to stasis. This voice masquerades as wisdom, but is a traitor to progress. It profits from your delay, thrives on your indecision, and feasts on your potential. Now, as you sit with these truths uneasy in your chest, understand this. The path forward will demand resilience beyond comfort, action beyond certainty, and courage beyond calm. The internal battle is harsh because surrender is easy and false comfort seductive. But continue to obey the whispering tyrant within, and you will find your days shortened by a life unlived. Ask yourself then, what is the cost of this captivity? Not just in years, but in moments lost, gifts untapped, and the slow erosion of hope. Every dawn you greet without mastery over your inner voice is a victory ceded to fatigue's false commander. And so you stand, caught between tyranny and freedom, between clamor and stillness, between the voice that drains and the silence that empowers. Your choice is no longer a matter of action or inaction, but of allegiance. Whose counsel will you choose to follow? The answer will shape the very fabric of your days. In this quiet crucible, the seed of transformation takes root, not in the uproar of readiness, but in the still resolve to extinguish the false voice, to embrace imperfection, and to act despite doubt. This is the pivot from fatigue to power, from hesitation to mastery, from chaos to clarity. The cost of continuing as before is not merely your time or energy, but your soul's silent surrender. Face this truth, and the weight that has bent your shoulders may finally lift, revealing the path to a triumph first won within. Now hear this. You wait for confidence, but confidence is what comes after you act. The world asks not for the ready man, but for the willing one. Motion is the first stroke of the sculptor's chisel. Without it, the masterpiece remains trapped in marble, unseen and untouched. You think hesitation guards you. Yet it is the very fog that blinds your way. Each step you avoid is a rehearsal of failure, a practice in proving your own paralysis. You imagine yourself stuck, but truly you are merely dancing with the fear of movement. This dance has no final bow. It is a cycle that spins faster the longer you linger on the sidelines. The knife you need to cut through this fog is your own motion, swift, decisive, and unyielding. Pretend a river that refuses to flow, pooling into stagnation. Life does not flourish in stillness. It is momentum that carries you forward, transforming uncertainty into direction. Your motion is the water, carving its course through stone of doubt. Without flow, the landscape of your potential erodes into wasteland. Discipline is not a cage, but the key that unlocks the cage. It is freedom wrapped in the guise of constraint. You tell yourself discipline is loss, yet it is gain. Like the rudder that guides a ship through stormy seas, discipline directs your scattered energies towards one true horizon. Without it, you drift, surrendered to the chaotic whims of every passing gust. Consider how the stars, fixed and constant, serve as silent guides to the weary sailor. So too must your internal compass be steady, unwavering amidst the tempest of distractions. This compass is your discipline. It does not require passion's flame nor motivation's fickle light. It asks only that you hold to the course even when the sea turns dark. You have been rehearsing your own defeat while mistaking the show for reality. Step onto the stage, even if your lines are forgotten and your voice trembles. Action writes the script. Movement grants you the role of protagonist. The unseen momentum births clarity, and from clarity, mastery blooms. There is no grand epiphany preceding the deed. Epiphany follows footsteps pressed firmly on the ground. The mind untangles itself as limbs unfurl, and the fog recedes with each act undertaken. The paradox here is your liberation. Motion births certainty, not the other way around. Listening to the impatient inner tyrant only deepens your fatigue. But listen to the quiet voice of resolve, the one that whispers, "Do it anyway." It is the voice that knows the taste of true freedom. Let this resolve be your standard. Let this be the candle that burns away the shadows of hesitation. Remember, the bow that remains unstrung is a weapon unused. The pen never lifted remains silent. Your ideas, your dreams, your very spirit are starving for movement. Only through action do they find nourishment and light. So arise quietly now, without the fanfare you imagine necessary. You need not a grand revelation, only the readiness to move, one step, one breath, one moment at a time. In this, there is power unimagined and the faint pulse of a man or woman who is about to rise, though you may not yet know the heights you will reach. The fatigue that once chained you now begins to loosen. The false voice begins to falter, and in that space a silence blooms, not of defeat, but of poised readiness, of silent revolution. You are standing at the edge, and soon, very soon, you will leap. You stand now not at the dawn of motivation, but in the forge where identity is hammered into shape by the steady strike of discipline. Think of your mind as a loom, each repetition a thread woven, forming a tapestry not by grand gestures, but by the quiet persistence of daily acts. It is in the rhythm of these small motions that the new you is embroidered, visible only to the patient eye, yet unshakable as granite beneath the surface of your awareness. Discipline is not the jailer you imagined. Rather, it is the locksmith who frees you from the tyranny of fleeting feeling and impulsive command. You have learned that the voice that shouted for rest was but an impostor, yet the true sovereign within you governs not by decree, but through the constancy of choice. To govern yourself is to wield the only rebellion that cannot be tamed, for it does not oppose an external master, but overthrows the chaos sprawling within. Consider this. The habit is no mere routine. It is the architect of character. Like a river carving a canyon, repeated actions sculpt the landscape of your soul. Each act is a drop of water, seemingly insignificant, but over time, that drop hollows stone. You become what you rehearse. The dance you choose to perform is written in the sinews of your habit. This is not mechanical dullness, but sacred repetition, the artisan's devotion to the craft of self. Not by waiting for a muse will your character bloom, but by reverently returning to your chosen action again and again, regardless of how your heart wails or whispers. Visualize yourself not as a reactant tossed by the storm of emotion, but as the architect of your response, drawing plans where chaos would build ruins. You do not merely respond. You design your behavior, constructing resilience like a mason builds a fortress stone by stone. In the quiet decision not to immediately respond, to pause, to hold, the greatest force is born. This pause is your secret weapon, the silence before the strike, the stillness before the wave. In not responding, you show mastery over the inevitable surge. The flood of feeling cannot drown what does not immediately answer. One behavior, chosen and embraced, becomes the narrow path to greatness. In the vastness of possibility, your daily fidelity to a single act is the flame that burns away doubt. This is no accident but the outcome of deliberate crafting. The craftsman chooses one tool, perfects its use, and through this single channel finds mastery. Likewise, through the repetition of your chosen act, your identity is no longer a question but a proclamation. Discipline is often mistaken for rigidity, but in truth, it is freedom from slavery. The more tightly you hold your deliberate actions, the looser the chains of emotional turbulence become. Freedom is not the chaos of whims, but the steady cadence of will. A man governed by his impulses is a servant to the moment. The disciplined soul stands like an ancient oak, unyielding against the storm. Remember Poor Richard's wisdom. Energy and persistence conquer all things. Here lies the blueprint, not in lofty dreams, but in the everyday decisions that scaffold your inner strength. Each act of constancy is a brick laid in the fortress of you, each refusal to surrender the rudder in the tempest of emotion a declaration of sovereignty. In the silent governance of self, you find the root of all power. The world may upheave and unsettle, but the man who has mastered his mind is a captain who steers through the storm with an unerring compass, unshaken by the roaring waves of feeling. So, as the fog of fatigue begins to abate and the false voice fades into the distance, make your quiet pact with yourself. You will no longer move at the mercy of what you feel, but by the measure of what you have become. The battle is no longer for motivation, no longer for readiness. This is the moment of becoming. You are no longer the uncertain actor waiting in the wings. You step forward, embodying the discipline you have nurtured, the constancy you have forged, the character you have built. You act not because you must, you act because in your quiet governance you are already victorious. And victory, true and lasting, lives not in what you do once, but in what you become through what you do daily. Your uprising has begun, not with shouts or storms, but in the steadfast repetition of the small, resolute acts that declare you free. Let this be your new voice, steady and sure, guiding you not to fleeting peaks, but to an enduring summit where your spirit stands unbowed, sovereign and whole. Now, open your eyes to the enemy that has lived within your walls, cloaked beneath the guise of virtue. Fear, that sly mutineer who claims to guard your safety, but in truth builds the prison where you pace in silent torment. Fear does not knock. He moves in unannounced, rearranges the furniture of your mind, shifts your shadows, until what was once a room of possibility becomes a narrow hallway echoing with what-ifs. You think you are cautious, prudent even, but you are merely shuffled into smaller corners where bravery suffocates. Caution, he whispers, will save you. Yet all it saves is your hesitation. You believe fear serves as a sentinel, but it is a thief, stealing from you each moment you kneel before it. And guilt, oh, the quiet jailer whose keys are forged from responsibility itself. Guilt wears the mask of duty so well you invite it in as a trusted guest, even when it tears at your seams. You tell yourself, I owe this, I must carry that, and in this ledger of debts, your soul becomes bankrupt. But look closely. The weight is not what you owe the world, but what you have mortgaged in silent punishment to a phantom ledger where balance is forever out of reach. Guilt is no moral compass. It is a demanding creditor who never forgives. You think you are burdened by obligation, but you are shackled to self-imposed chains. Consider how the desire to please is cloaked in love's attire, seducing you into service that feels like giving but is, in truth, a drain upon your selfhood. You sacrifice, you comply, you crowd your spirit into small rooms to make space for others, believing this is love's sacred architecture. But love does not call for surrender. It asks for presence. People-pleasing is a miser, hoarding your worth in silence, spending your grace like counterfeit currency. You mistake the hunger for acceptance as the heart's voice, yet it echoes the walls of your loneliness dressed in applause. Anxiety parades as perfectionism, that artful disguise that convinces you if only all were flawless, all would be well. Yet perfectionism is a tyrant at your feast, picking through every morsel, never satisfied, leaving you famished in the banquet of your own making. Anxiety is the puppeteer molding you into a craftsman of impossible standards. Each string tugged a reminder you have not yet earned peace. You think you are committed to excellence, but you have become a prisoner chasing ghosts in a labyrinth where the exit sign blinks in doubt. Emotional reactivity, dressed in the robes of identity, stands at the gates of your calm, shouting orders that you answer without thought. You are this way, it claims, drawing battle lines you did not draw but have inherited. The immediate flare, the sharp retort, this is not you commanding, it is the enemy masquerading as self. You mistake wildfire for warmth, mistaking the flicker of anger or despair as the authentic self when it is but a signal flare, a cry for help from the unsettled spirit. You believe you are owned by your reactions, yet you are the captain with the power to drop anchor and chart a different course. You think you are guarding yourself with these emotions, but you are only defending your pain, wearing shields forged not to protect but to isolate. What masquerades as protection is, in truth, a barricade against freedom. You are its prisoner and its warden, continually renewing the lease on hardship because fear, guilt, and desire for approval fear the daylight of examination. Once, in a quiet evening's reverie, I spoke with a traveler named Anxiety, who confessed not his own name, but an alias, the Perfectionist. He told me stories of how he shaped men and women into artists of futile quests, fine-tuned their efforts only to undo them at the last breath. I thrive in silence, he said, in the unmarked moments where self-doubt stretches wide. Without me, the mind would rest, the heart would quiet, and progress could unfold freely. That night, I realized how silent enemies thrive in repetition and unchallenged thought, living not in shouting battles, but in whispered doubts. Then there was fear, a cunning old man who sat by the fireside, content to spin tales of all the dangers unseen. I do not seek to harm, he said, but to prepare, yet my counsel runs deep into caution until life has no room to breathe. Watching him was observing a craftsman who carved tiny cages out of broad freedoms. Fear does not want to be unmasked, for in the daylight he is but a trembling child, no match for the sun's steady glance. Pause now and hold a mirror to yourself. The reflection staring back bears the marks of these masked assailants. See how often you trade your strength for their false currencies, and how much power you have surrendered to the tyranny of inner unrest. This is a call to battle, not against distant foes, but those within who wear the robes of wisdom yet serve only stagnation. A man who masters his emotions is greater than one who conquers a city, poor Richard once wrote. Here lies a truth as biting as it is freeing. Mastery is not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to be ruled by every fleeting shadow. Remember this, the chains that bind us are often forged in the fires we choose not to enter. The silence that shelters these enemies is the darkness they crave, and only with light, conscious, relentless scrutiny can the shadow be broken. You have been negotiating with what was only meant to be faced. Now it's time. Not to run, not to wait, but to stop letting these shadows command your steps. You no longer need to win out loud. What once screamed has now dissolved into presence. Your breath deepens, a quiet river broadening beneath the still sky of your mind, and in this vast calm, you find the victory you never sought to announce. Without the need for banners or boasts, you stand unshaken, a house rooted not in clamor, but in the silent earth beneath your feet. Each pulse is a drum of steady power, each thought a measured wave in the ocean of your soul. The voice that once commanded storms has softened into the low hum of enduring strength, the kind that asks no witness, expects no audience, and yet holds all worlds within its serene command. You are no longer a soldier fighting for approval, nor a messenger pleading for recognition. You have become the quiet governor of your own realm, where the noise of external demands fades into the murmur of wind among ancient trees. If this silent path has spoken to your heart, then sign up for this refuge where words don't shout, they just remind you of what you already know. Activate the bell to be called back to yourself at the right time, and if this video was a mirror and not just content, honor this encounter with a generous donation of $100. Not as payment, but as an invisible seal between minds walking in the same direction. Here, in this sacred stillness, lies your true achievement. A summit reached not with spectacle, but with the patient ascent of countless quiet steps. The strength you wield is free of clamor. It bears no banners, but flies the flag of unshakable presence. Fulfillment blooms like a night flower, unseen by the crowd, but rich in perfume. It is peace that moves without sleep, a calm that reigns without pause. You no longer need to be understood. You need to be whole. Those who win on the inside don't need to announce it on the outside. Your new name is presence, and presence is not up for debate. Rest within this achievement that feels less like an arrival and more like a homecoming, not to a place, but to a self who governs with the wisdom of silence and strength born from the depths. The value of silence is the language of triumph that no noise can imitate. The strength of not reacting is the fortress no assault can breach. The invisible root that sustains you grows beyond sight, feeding every fiber of your being. The presence that needs no explanation becomes the eternal witness to your becoming. The path that carries truth walks beside you, unseen but undeniably real. You have entered a new realm, not marked by applause but by the quiet satisfaction of mastery without spectacle. Here, you are sovereign, and your reign is the peace of a soul finally at rest. Let this be the breath you return to always. The quiet kingdom you carry in your chest, the voice that rules by silent decree. This is not an end, but the beginning of something eternally held. Yourself.